There's this this is like a great exercise in trust here. There's this great little ditty song that probably many of you know. It's the one that goes, you rise and shine and give God the glory, glory. You know this one? Rise and shine and give God the glory, glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, children of the Lord. So, great exercise in trust there, because singing is not my strong suit, but it's one of those really catchy, peppy tunes. It's about God, it's about glory, there's not much not to love about it. Well, on any given Sunday, we will sing in this very place of the glory of God. And throughout our songs and our prayers and our readings, the word glory is used over and over again. But today, on Transfiguration Sunday, it is a Sunday in which we really celebrate the glory of God. We celebrate this manifestation that we see on the mountain. And we hear that Jesus is shown in glory, and that Elijah and Moses appeared with Jesus in glory, and that Moses' face radiates glory, and that Elijah, we know, was whisked away in glory. So in these readings, and today, glory seemingly abounds. And for me, this is an issue. Not God's glory per se, but exactly what God's glory means. Because I don't see very many fluorescent faces around. And I will also readily admit to you that the word transfiguration is also an issue for me. We only ever use that word in church. What the heck do they have to do with real life? And is it even definable? And so what sometimes happens to me is I start off on these tangents of mine and I end up down some very strange paths. And so I was thinking that glory and transfiguration, they must be more than just some type of spiritual Mardi Gras just before we enter the somberness of Lent. Is Transfigure Sunday just when churchgoers such as us sort of throw our glitter and our beads and all those kinds of things? I don't think that we need glitter and beads and all that to show us what glory is about. Or maybe we do. So anyway, I looked up Transfiguration. And you know what it says? It says, a complete change in form to something more beautiful or spiritual in nature. So I'm fairly sure the Bible influenced that definition. And I think it's a terrible definition. How does Jesus become more beautiful, more spiritual? I mean, this is Jesus we're talking about. Can God become more beautiful and more spiritual? Can God become more of God? I just got more confused. And glory wasn't much better. I looked up glory, and it says, a luminous ring around Jesus' head. Oh. Well, I honestly have not had the privilege of seeing whether or not Jesus actually wears a halo, although it seems a bit more flashy than what I envision his fashion sense to be. Another definition I also found was great beauty. And I already discussed that, God getting more beautiful doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And this past week, after the Super Bowl, we've all heard the word glory tossed around a lot about the Ravens and the Super Bowl. So beauty doesn't really hold water in relation to football players. I mean, they might be cute and they might be hot, but they're not getting more beautiful. So I searched and I searched for something of real substance in relation to glory. And commentator after commentator just kept talking about God's glory on Transfiguration Sunday without ever saying what God's glory is, or does, or means. And so in my book, it becomes invalid. If you can't tell me or show me what it means, then it becomes irrelevant. Now, I don't know that we as a church or a society have historically done a good job explaining glory. But I do think that God has done a staggering job of enacting it. I just think we missed it. Twinkle and shimmer and glint and gleam are easy to see and easy to remember. And the Bible even attests to this. We remember this blinding Jesus. We have a whole Sunday we dedicate to just this moment. And we remember the shining Moses because they are so out of the ordinary. But honestly, that just doesn't happen very much. Angels dazzle sometimes, and Jesus even dazzles sometimes. And apparently ordinary people dazzle sometimes, but just not that often. Or maybe I missed it. Because either God's glory only shows up sometimes, or God's glory looks and acts differently than we think. So I thought that I would check out the Bible, which I know is a very surprising place to look, but I used to have this professor in seminary who said, read the Bible. It sheds a lot of light on the commentators. And so on this day of brightness, I looked for some razzle-dazzle, and I didn't find much of that, but I did find enlightenment. But razzle-dazzle, not so much. See, I think we can all agree that this Bible passage is about God's glory, because it sort of says it in verse 31, and in verse 32, and in verse 43. So I scoured this passage for hints of glory, and I couldn't help but laugh as I heard these words in a new light. So if you have your bulletin, if you'll find verse 45. I know, I'm going to keep you on your toes. So verse 45, it says, "But they didn't understand the saying. Its meaning was concealed from them, so that they could not perceive it, and they were afraid to ask him." And I couldn't help but think, the meaning of glory has apparently not only been concealed from disciples, but also from us. And of course they were afraid to ask him. Seriously, this is a confrontational, sacrificial, renouncing, and scary Jesus here. I would be afraid too. It's also an amazing story of healing, a compassionate, and a picture of a prayerful Jesus. But the whole thing is just scary. But the part that started to illuminate glory for me is Moses and Elijah. It's the fact that they were talking to Jesus about his departure. See, I'm sure that was a really swell conversation that went along, because Moses and Elijah are people who know all about departure, all about Exodus, all about death and rejection, all about being led into places that few would choose to go. So we have Elijah, a prophet who had great zeal for the Lord, who pleaded with the people to return to the Lord, and many times his words just fell on deaf ears. And then there's also Moses, who led the people through the Red Sea and gave the people the Ten Commandments, and still the words fell on hard hearts. See, I can just see Elijah saying, "You know, Jesus, old buddy, old pal, let me tell you about the glory of God." See, this is how it's going to fly. And then there's Moses, they're having this conversation, right? And then there's Moses following up with, "Do you remember when I led the people through the Red Sea? How we had to go through death to get to life? Well, buddy, it's sort of going to be that way with you too. You'll drown leading the people from the shores of Jerusalem to the banks of heaven, and the people are going to thrash and kick and scream, and they'll try not to drown." God's glory looks like that. Drowning in the sea, and then suddenly you aren't. Proclaiming there is another path, and everyone's still going the wrong way. Praying on your knees and falling asleep, even though you didn't mean to. Loving as much as you possibly can, and you still end up getting hurt. Tumbling down a mountain into demons, and victory doesn't come easily. Glory looks like that. Laying down your life to save another, and hanging on a cross and still forgiving and loving. Glory looks like that. And that really isn't beautiful. It's a striking vision of demise and delivery all intermingled together. Because the distance between what goes on the top of the mountain and what goes on at the bottom of the mountain is not that far. Jesus' clothes might have been dazzling white on the mountain, but they were torn into rags at the cross. And Jesus' face may have shone brightly on the mountain, but it was sweaty and beaten on the cross. Today, I've actually asked the kids to help me out with glory. Just hold on one moment, guys, because I think it's fine for me to tell you what the Bible says about glory. And I can point us all in the right directions, and I can stand up here and talk to you. You know I can go on for a long time. But on this Transfiguration Sunday, a day in which we see God's glory, a day in which the prophets get to see God's glory, and the disciples get to see God's glory, and the people at the bottom of the mountain get to see God's glory, I thought that maybe we should too. And so I need the kids to come up to help me out. Carter and Chris, you guys want to come up and help me out also? Anybody under the age of 16? You'll see. You find a spot, and the younger kids will teach the older kids in this moment.
Yes.
Okay. You guys ready? Am I going to help you guys out here? All right. You ready?
Yep.
Just take it off. 1, 2, 3.
Oh,
Once you bring your cups back up. All right.
Yeah.
Do the rest of it. Just do it out there.
Do it, Jackson.
Get this show back up. So now we're all a little bit glittering and shimmering, right? A little bit like Moses and Elijah. Right? Everybody's got a little bit of glitter on them. See, the fact is that within all our broken pieces, within all our demons, within all our faithlessness, God's glory appears. And also within all our healing, and in all our angels, and within all our devotion, God's glory appears. Because the Transfiguration changed the way the disciples saw Jesus, and the way they saw God. But that's not all, because that is undeniably glorious. The cross, too, changed the way the disciples saw Jesus, and the way they saw God. Because it is a lot to believe that God's lit up life includes death. So I guess that God's glory is actually undefinable, because it manifests itself in so many different ways. Because see, if you look at yourselves right now, you are the same as when you walked in. You're just a little bit brighter. Each of you, a glory of God and a glory for God. God promises to make our darknesses dazzle. Now, I know that you're going to want to wipe that glitter off, and I know that I made a mess. And I know that it doesn't look quite right. And I know that you may even feel insecure with all that glitter on you. And you may even feel like I don't deserve to shine. And I know that some of it's going to fall off, but some of it will remain today. And at least for today, maybe you won't forget the dazzling light of Jesus revealed in you and through you. And someone else, they might see your glitter, and they might wonder. And you may get to say to that person, rise and shine, and give God your glory, glory.